When you are working with absolute value equations, there are four main steps to go through. Step number one, you need to isolate that absolute value sign. You want to get just the absolute value on one side equal to something else on the other side. Step number two, you're going to set whatever's inside the absolute value bars equal to both the positive and negative number of whatever's on the other side. So you're taking that one equation and essentially making two equations out of it. Step number three, you're going to solve both equations. And then number four, you're going to write your answer as a solution set, showing that there are multiple answers for the same question. So for example, x equals, you could fill in 5, comma, -5 if there's two answers. Your solution set is denoted with curly brackets on each side of it. Definitely easiest to figure out by doing some problems. So let's start with number one on your guided note sheet. The absolute value of x equals 2. You guys know that absolute value means the distance away from 0. So the number 2 is 2 steps away from 0, but so is -2. So this solution set is as easy as saying x equals 2 and -2. Number 2, the absolute value of m equals 14. 14 is 14 steps away from 0, but so is -14. So you'll see m equals actually two values, 14 and -14. You put curly brackets around the outside of those two answers. Number 3 is more like what you're going to see on a regular basis with absolute value equations. You will notice that the absolute value bars are totally by itself on the left-hand side of the equation. That's just how we want it. And now what we're going to do is take what's inside and set it equal to the positive version of what's on the other side and set it equal to the negative version of what's on the other side. Because as we did up here, it can be the positive or the negative distance from 0. So then as we solve this, z here equals 8, z here equals -8, and our final answer then would be z equals, you do those curly brackets, 8 and -8, two different answers. Going to number 6, you'll notice the absolute value bars are isolated on the left side of the equation. So I'm going to take what's inside and set it equal to +28 and set it equal to -28. Be careful that you take exactly what's inside the absolute value bars. You do not make this positive. The bars are what make it positive. You do need to leave that negative symbol right there. As you are solving this, you guys know this means to divide by -7. 28 divided by -7 is -4. And as you do it to this side, your solution would be +4. Your final answer is the combination of both those solutions. So A equals, curly brackets, -4 and +4. Let's skip over to number 9. You'll see that absolute value bars are isolated here. So I'm going to take 4n plus 2 and set it equal to +34. And then I'm also going to take the 4n plus 2 and set it equal to the -34. Because remember, those absolute value bars could be the positive answer or the negative answer. As I solve this, n equals, how about I do that correctly? N equals 8. As I solve this one, subtract 2 on each side. 4n equals -36. Officially, I'm dividing by 4 here. N equals -9. So notice that your solution isn't always like the positive and the negative version of the same number. In this solution here, n equals 8 and -9. They can be different numbers. In number 10, the absolute value bars are isolated. So I'm going to take what's inside of it and set it equal to the positive version of 17, and in another equation set it equal to the negative version of 17. As I solve this, I'm going to add 5 to both sides. divide by -2, and I get -11 up here. In my second equation, when I add 5 to both sides, -2v equals -12. When I divide by -2, I get a +6. So again, they are different numbers. It's not always the positive and negative version of the same number. Don't forget to go back and actually write your solution. In number 10, v equals -11 and 6. And make sure you put those curly brackets around it. Number 11. You'll notice here that our absolute value bars are not isolated on one side. So the first thing we need to do is subtract the 2 from each side of the river, if you care to draw that squiggly in. And now, just like solving a regular equation, my absolute value of c is isolated. It's the only thing you see on the left-hand side, and that's how we want it. So the c has to be set equal to the positive version of 10 and the negative version of 10, which in fact is the solution set. Looks something like that. Number 12, again, my absolute value bars are not isolated. So I first need to add 8 to both sides of my equation. And now that my absolute value bars are isolated, my y is equal to the positive version of the other side and also the negative version of the other side. Number 13, when a number is next to something else, it means multiply. Just like if it were next to a variable or next to parentheses, it does the same thing when it's next to an absolute value bar. So in this case, I would divide by 6 on each side. And now my absolute value bars are isolated on the left, means they're the only thing that's there. So I'm going to take what's inside my absolute value bars and set it equal to the positive and the negative version of the other side. So in this case, the solution set is 4 and -4. Number 14 is going to be the most complicated one we've done so far. You'll notice the absolute value bars are not isolated. When this -2 is next to it, it means multiply. So we need to do the inverse of that, which is divide by -2. The absolute value of z plus 3 equals +7. Now that the absolute value bars are the only thing on that side, I'm going to take whatever is inside and set it equal to the positive version of the other side, but also set it equal to the negative version of the other side. Each of these just involves solving it for the variable, in this case x equals 4, and in this case x equals -10. Don't forget to finish up your problem by identifying the solution set that x has the answer of 4 and -10. And then curly brackets. And in question number 15, you'll see the absolute value bars are not isolated. We first need to subtract 1 on each side of the equation. And now that my absolute value bars are all by themselves on the left-hand side, I'm going to take whatever is inside of them and set it equal to the positive version of the other side. And my second equation will set it equal to the negative version of the other side. As I solve my equation, just like I would in a normal type of equation, over here I get w equals 6. Over here I get w equals -2. And then don't forget your final answer is the solution set of putting both of those together. W equals 6 and -2. At this time, I'm going to have you go through your guided note sheet and finish up any absolute value equations that I did not demonstrate for you. So go ahead and pause the video, and when you're ready to check the answers, I'll have it on the next slide here.